And we have breaking news from the Middle East. Raf Sanchez is in Israel. Raf, the news is that at least one branch of Hamas, and it's critically not the most important branch, the most militant, led by Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be underground in one of those tunnels. But we've heard from Haniya, who is the political leader of Hamas, in a statement to the officials in Qatar and to the Egyptian intelligence leaders. So they are saying that they have tentatively accepted a ceasefire, but we don't know if this is really speaking for Hamas. Is that your understanding?
That's a really important distinction, Andrea, but that's right. So Ismail Haniya, who is the head of the political wing of Hamas, in just the last couple of minutes, putting out a statement saying that he has informed the Egyptians and the Qataris that Hamas has tentatively approved of this ceasefire proposal that has been on the table. Now, exactly as you say, the key decision maker inside Hamas is Yahya Sinwar. He is the Gaza chief. He is in charge on the military side. He is believed to be in the tunnels underneath southern Gaza right now. We have not heard from him. We have not, at this point, heard from the Israeli government about this tentative proposal. What we saw with that last ceasefire deal, Andrea, back in November, which feels like a very, very long time ago, was that the proposal had to be approved by Israel's war cabinet, by its security cabinet, and then by the full Israeli government. So it is too early at this point to say that a ceasefire deal has been agreed, but this is a positive first sign, Hamas's political wing indicating that it has tentatively agreed to this proposal. Now, Andrea, the most recent iteration of this deal was that Hamas had agreed to release 33 hostages from the so-called humanitarian category. So that is women, it is children, it is the elderly, and it is those hostages with serious medical conditions. In exchange, Israel said it would agree to a 40-day ceasefire and the release of potentially thousands of Palestinian prisoners. Israel also signaling that it was prepared to allow some displaced Palestinian civilians to return to their homes in northern Gaza. Now, that was the most recent iteration of the deal, but there has been really frenetic diplomacy over the weekend, including and involving CIA Director Bill Burns, who flew into Egypt. He traveled to Qatar. He traveled here to Israel, trying to keep these talks on track. So we do not know the exact detail at this point of what Hamas has agreed to. And it's worth saying, Andrea, that these deals are often structured in terms of first an agreement on the broad framework, then an agreement on the specific details. And those details, the devil can be in them. So we should be cautious at this point, but there is an initial indication from Hamas's political wing that they are open to approval of this deal. Now, this statement coming a little while after President Biden, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke earlier on today. They talked about these ceasefire negotiations, the president reiterating his opposition to an Israeli large-scale ground offensive in Rafah. We did see some first indications today that that ground offensive may be imminent. Israel dropping leaflets from aircraft over eastern Rafah, telling Palestinian civilians in that area to evacuate, that Israel is planning to move into that area. It's not clear whether this is the start of the full offensive against Rafah, which Prime Minister Netanyahu has been threatening for months now, or if this is potentially a more limited operation after Hamas fired a number of rockets yesterday towards the area of Kerem Shalom, killing 4 Israeli soldiers. There was a little bit of news in that otherwise fairly general diplomatic readout of the call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, which is that the president apparently secured an agreement from the prime minister to reopen the Kerem Shalom crossing, one of the key crossings for aid to get into Gaza. It has been closed since that Hamas attack yesterday. Andrea.
And let me just jump in with that context is so important because Secretary Blinken, and I was traveling with him, as you know, We were in Kerem Shalom. He spent quite a lot of time. While he was in Kerem Shalom, just on Wednesday, he met for a good deal of time with Defense Minister Gallant. And they were talking about, all of the above. And at that point, Israel had committed to try to move more humanitarian aid through. They had just opened the Erez crossing, a third crossing, in addition to Rafah and Kerem Shalom. So that was a major part of the Blinken mission. And so for that crossing to be closed immediately after these rocket attacks and the death of 4 Israeli soldiers was something of big concern to the U.S. because of approaching famine and all of the other problems. They've been focused on that. Raf, also, every time the president speaks to the prime minister, he is reiterating that, and according to all of my reporting from this trip, from all sides, that the U.S. and a number of their allies do not feel that the plan for Rafah, for moving all these people, is at all adequate to the challenge, that Israel is not ready, or should not be ready, to begin moving into Rafah. And maybe there's the possibility that this buildup and the threats to go into Rafah that we heard after the cabinet meeting yesterday is to pressure Hamas to try to agree to the ceasefire, that there's a game of negotiation, of chicken going on here. But in any case, if they do go into Rafah, it is without any kind of green light. And in fact, it is in complete defiance, if you will, of the pleadings, the repeated pleadings from the Secretary of State and the President of the United States to not do that while these people, 1.4 million people, 1.2 million who were displaced, are still in such jeopardy. As well, there was the military plan that is not yet in the kind of shape that the U.S. thinks is reduced and organized the way they would like to see. So they do have a military plan, and they have a very partial relocation plan, neither of which are really acceptable to the White House. Raf?
Yeah, that's right, Andrea. The White House has been saying consistently that it has not seen a credible plan from the Israeli government about how and where it would move those million-plus Palestinian civilians to safety. Now, the IDF told us this morning that the area of eastern Rafah it is telling people to evacuate from, it estimates that there are around 100,000 Palestinian civilians in that area. And they've been told to go north and they've been told to go west to an area called Al-Mawasi, which is a kind of a strip of the Mediterranean coast in Gaza. They are saying that that is a safer zone. I asked the Israeli military, what guarantees can you give Palestinian civilians about their safety if you go there? Can you say that they will not be bombed if they go there? They say it will certainly be safer than eastern Rafah, where they anticipate that there is going to be active fighting, but that Israel reserves the right to strike inside of this safe zone if Hamas is operating there. And we have seen repeatedly, time and time in the past, that Israel has bombed inside of safe zones. It says that Hamas has used those zones to fire rockets, to carry out other military activities. Now, at this point, Andrea, we have not seen Israeli forces actually moving into this area east of Rafah. I spoke to an Israeli official earlier. They said the timing of the actual ground offensive will be determined, one, by when they get the order from Israel's government to move in, and two, how long it takes to evacuate those Palestinian civilians from eastern Rafah. But Israel has said fairly consistently that if there is a deal, it is prepared to at least delay an attack on Rafah. And we are getting this indication from Hamas that from their side at least, they are prepared to accept this proposal that has been on the table. Andrea.
Well, this is obviously something that we're going to be covering very closely. Raf, let me let you get back to your reporting.